You're sitting on a heap of ashes with a shard of pottery in your hand. This is not a metaphor. Real ash, the ash from the city's garbage dump, the place outside the walls where they throw dead animals and everything no one wants anymore. You use that shard of pottery to scrape your wounds. From the sole of your foot to the top of your head, open sores, pus, crust that hardens and cracks, an itch that gives you no rest by day or by night. The pain isn't sharp, it's dull, constant, like a low voice that never goes quiet, and your wife just turned her back on you and said the sentence you never expected to hear from anyone in the world. Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die. She didn't say it in anger. She said it with the empty face of someone who has cried everything she had. She also lost the 10 children. She also woke up one ordinary day and watched the whole world disappear. The difference is that she is still standing, still working, still serving in other people's houses to support you while you scrape wounds with a pottery shard on a pile of ashes outside the walls. And the question she asked is not cruelty. It is the most honest question anyone has asked you since everything collapsed. But to understand the weight of that sentence, you need to understand who you were before. 30 days ago, you were the most respected man in the entire region of Uz. Uz sits on the eastern edge of the civilized world of that time, on the strip of land between what will become Edom and what the desert nomads call home. An arid land, heavy sun, red and yellow stones, but with fertile valleys where flocks grow. And you had more livestock than any other man your neighbors had ever known. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, a large house, grown sons, daughters who made good marriages, servants who worked your lands. The text that will tell your story will call you the greatest of all the people of the East. That was not a title. It was what people said when your name came up. But what made you who you were was not the livestock. It was where you sat, at the city gate. In the ancient world, the city gate was everything at once. It was the courthouse. It was the marketplace. It was the social heart of any place with walls. And when you arrived and took your seat, the elders stopped speaking. The young men stepped aside, not out of fear, out of respect, because everyone knew what you were. The man who heard the case of the poor, the man who accepted no bribes, the man who looked at the orphan and did not look away, the man who defended the cause of the foreigner when no one else cared. You had 7 sons and 3 daughters. Every cycle of feasting, they gathered at the oldest brother's house, ate, drank, celebrated. And you, the next morning, woke up early, very early before anyone, and offered burnt offerings for each one of them. One by one, not because you thought they had sinned, because you thought, what if they have sinned in their hearts and don't know it? You did this every time, every time. It was your silent protection over them, a routine no one saw but that you never skipped. To understand what happened, you need to know about something that took place far from your eyes, very far. In a gathering of the heavenly court, the sons of God presented themselves before him. And among them appeared a being who in Hebrew is called Ha-Satan, the accuser, not a proper name, a role, the prosecutor of the celestial court, the being whose specific function is to test, to question, to accuse. He roams the earth, observes human beings, and presents theses about them. He is the devil's advocate in the original sense of the term, before any later theology complicated what that function meant. God asked him whether he had noticed his servant Job, a man of integrity, upright, who fears God, who shuns evil. And the accuser presented his thesis. Of course Job fears God. You put a hedge around him, around his household, around everything he has. You bless the work of his hands. His livestock has spread across the entire land. But take away what he has, and then you'll see. He will curse you to your face. God agreed to test. With one clear limit, you may not touch him. You knew nothing of this. No one told you. No one asked your opinion. Someone wagered on your integrity without asking you whether you wanted to be the subject of the bet. And then came the day with no name. You were at home when the first messenger arrived. Breathless, mud on his knees, the eyes of someone who doesn't know how to tell what he's telling. The Sabaeans swept down. The Sabaeans were a nomadic people from southern Arabia, caravan warriors, fast and violent when they chose to be. They seized all the oxen, all the donkeys. They killed the servants. Only he escaped to tell you. He was still speaking when the second messenger arrived. Fire fell from the sky. It consumed the 7,000 sheep and all the shepherds. Every one. Only he escaped to tell you. The second was still speaking when the third arrived. The Chaldeans, from the north, from Mesopotamia, formed 3 raiding parties and fell on the camel herds. 3,000 camels. They took them all. They killed the servants. Only he escaped to tell you. And the third was still speaking when the fourth arrived. Your sons and daughters were at the oldest brother's house, feasting. A wind came from the desert. That wind in the east that has no name but everyone recognizes. The one that lifts sand before it bends palm trees. It struck the 4 corners of the house. The house collapsed. All 10 children died. Only he escaped to tell you. 4 messengers, one right after another, as though the universe had arranged to tell you everything in a single breath, so you would have no time to process one before the next arrived. You stood up, you tore your robe, you shaved your head, you fell to the ground. And what you said there was the sentence that all of humanity will repeat for millennia. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all of this you did not sin. You charged God with nothing foolish. But that was not the end. The accuser returned to the court. He said that skin for skin, everything a man has, he will give for his own life. Strike his bone and his flesh, and then it will be different. And the limit was changed. You may touch him, only do not take his life. The sores appeared. From the sole of his foot to the top of his head, open wounds that would not close, pus, crust, an itch that gave no peace. Commentators will debate for centuries what it was. Severe smallpox? Elephantiasis. Something else the ancient world could not name, but everyone recognized when they saw it. What matters is not the diagnosis. What matters is what it means when the man who was the moral reference of the city ends up on a pile of ashes outside the walls, scraping his own skin with a pottery shard, because no one wants to come near him anymore. In the world of Uz, visible illness was a sign of a curse, a sign that something was wrong between you and the divine. The people who stopped when you entered a place now changed their path before catching sight of you. The man who sat in the city's court suddenly could not even enter the city. You, who had protected others, were now in the place where they throw what no one wants anymore. And your wife, who lost the children alongside you, who woke up and watched the world disappear alongside you, who is still standing when you can no longer stand, looked at you there on that pile of ashes and said the most honest thing anyone said since everything turned to smoke. Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die. What you answered was, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we accept good from God and not accept adversity? In all of this, you did not sin with your lips. But it will take you some time to understand the difference between not sinning with your lips and having nothing to say. 3 days later, the 3 friends arrived. Eliphaz from Teman. Teman was a city of Edom, land of ancient shepherds. Territory of Esau, a people who knew the desert as they knew their own hand. Bildad from Shuah. Shuah was a descendant of Abraham through Keturah, a people of the east, men who knew commerce and law. Zophar from Naamah. No one is quite certain where that was. Perhaps in Arabia, perhaps also in Edom. What matters is that they came from far away when they heard. True friends who crossed the desert to be with you. When they arrived and saw you from a distance, they did not recognize you. They lifted their voices and wept. They tore their robes, they threw dust on their heads, and they sat down on the ground with you. 7 days and 7 nights, without saying a word, because they saw that the grief was too great for any words to reach. 7 days of silence was the most correct thing the 3 friends did. In the ancient world, 7 days was the standard mourning period. Physical presence, shared weeping, silence together. That was the right language for that moment. The problem began on the 8th day, when you opened your mouth. And what came out was not the sentence that tradition will print on the posters of teenagers' bedrooms. What came out was this: "Let the day perish in which I was born, and the night that said, 'A boy is conceived.' Let that day be darkness. Let God above not care about it. Why did I not die at birth? Why did I not expire when I came out of the womb? Why did the knees receive me? Why did the breasts nurse me? Why does God give light to him who suffers, and life to the bitter in soul, who longs for death but it does not come, who searches for it more than for hidden treasure?" That is Job chapter 3. The Job no one teaches in Sunday school. This Job does not have a peaceful soul. This Job is asking that the day of his birth be erased from the calendar of the universe. This Job questions why God gives life to those who no longer want to live. This Job is furious in a way so articulate, so precise, so lucid that the fury looks like philosophy. Eliphaz spoke first. Eliphaz was the oldest of the 3, the most careful with his words. "You yourself instructed many," he said. "You strengthened weak hands. Your words held up those who were stumbling. But now that it has come to your turn, you are discouraged. You shouldn't be afraid. Think carefully. Has the innocent ever perished? Those who plow iniquity, those who sow trouble, they reap the same. True integrity is confidence. God wounds, but he also heals. Accept the discipline of the Almighty." Eliphaz's thesis was clean, clear, well constructed. God is just. Suffering is punishment. Therefore you did something wrong, perhaps without knowing it. But suffering does not lie. Accept it, ask forgiveness, and come out of this. Bildad said the same with less gentleness. God does not pervert justice. If your children sinned, they suffered what they deserved. If you seek God now, he will restore you. If you are pure and upright, he will rouse himself on your behalf. Your children sinned. That is what Bildad said. A man who lost 10 children in a single day heard from a friend that they died because they deserved it. Zophar was the harshest of the 3. He said that God is exacting from you less than your iniquity deserves. That if God spoke, he would show you the secrets of wisdom. Put away iniquity from your hand. Do not let injustice dwell in your tent. Then you will forget your suffering. Then it will be like water that has passed. 3 friends, 3 versions of the same thesis. Suffering is punishment. You did wrong, admit it and get out. And you answered all of them, not with calm, with articulate fury. You said they were miserable comforters, that their words were ashes, that their proverbs were proverbs of clay, that if they kept silent, it would be counted as wisdom in them, that they were lying on God's behalf, inventing theology to defend the divine, using arguments that do not hold up when pressed against the reality you are living. And you said something that will explode through the entire history of the book, that you wanted to speak directly with God, that you wanted to present your case, that if there were an arbiter between you and him, someone who would lay his hand on both and judge with impartiality, you would speak without fear, because your conscience does not have what the friends say it has, and you will not lie to fit yourself into their theology. Look at what is happening here. The 3 friends have perfect theology, a closed system. God is just. Suffering is punishment. You sinned, ask forgiveness. Everything resolves, everything fits. You have an experience that does not fit in that system. You did not sin. You lost everything anyway. And the honesty about that, the refusal to invent a guilt that does not exist just to make the equation balance, is more faithful to reality than any argument the three present. This is where the book separates itself from the rest of the wisdom literature of the time. The poem of the righteous sufferer, a Mesopotamian text that predates the book of Job by centuries, tells the story of a man who suffered without reason and in the end gave thanks to the gods for his restoration. The traditional narrative is, suffering comes, suffering goes, man gives thanks. The cycle closes. Job does not close. Job demands an audience. Job wants a trial, not clemency. Job is not asking forgiveness for something he did not do. Job is asking that someone look at reality without the lenses of ready-made theology. And in chapter 29, you make an inventory of who you were when God watched over you, when his lamp shone on your head. When you went out to the city gate and the young men stepped back, the elders rose to their feet. When you rescued the poor who cried out and the orphan who had no one. When you were eyes to the blind, feet to the lame, a father to the needy. You examined the case of the stranger, you broke the fangs of the unrighteous and made him drop his prey from his teeth. And now you are an object of mockery to those whose fathers you would not even have set with the dogs of your flock. And in chapter 31, you make the oath, a complete moral inventory. If I have walked in falsehood, if my foot has hastened to deceit, if I have rejected the cause of my servant when he brought a complaint against me, if I have turned my face away from the poor, if I rejoiced at the ruin of my enemy, if I have concealed my transgression like Adam, if I have eaten its yield without payment, if I have let the stranger sleep on the street, if I have made gold my hope, if I have rejoiced in my great wealth. That oath, in the ancient Near Eastern world, was the equivalent of placing your case before a tribunal and saying, "Judge me, measure everything I have done, and if I was wrong on any point, condemn me." That is not arrogance. That is the last form of honesty available to a man who has lost everything and still refuses to invent a guilt that does not exist. No one speaks after that, and then the wind comes. Not a metaphor, a real storm. In Hebrew, the word is se'ara, whirlwind, tempest. And from within the storm, God answers. But he does not answer what you asked. You presented a legal case. You wanted a judgment, and the answer that comes from within the storm is not a verdict. It is a series of questions. More than 70 questions, none of them answered. All of them about the scale of the universe. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? Have you entered into the storehouses of snow? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Do you hunt prey for the lion? Do you count the months that the mountain goat carries her young? Will you bind the wild ox with a rope to the furrow? Have you given the horse his strength? Does the hawk soar by your wisdom when it spreads its wings toward the south? Does the raven cry to you when its young ones cry out for food? 70-some questions, each one about a process that exists without your knowing why. About creatures that function without your control, about parts of the universe that were happening long before you existed and that will go on happening long after. And you, who were the orator, who were the arbiter at the city gate, who had built a complete legal case across 40 chapters, you have nothing to say. I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. But God does not stop. He continues, a second round of questions, harder, heavier. Can you abase the proud? Can you tread down the wicked? Do you know Behemoth, the greatest creature that inhabits the earth? Do you know Leviathan, before whom terror itself dwells? And at the end, after 2 rounds, you speak again. And the sentence you say this time is different from anything you said before. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Take a moment to understand the weight of that. You do not have the answers. None of your questions were answered directly. You do not know why you lost your children. You do not know why the sores appeared. You do not know what the accuser said in the heavenly court. You do not know about the wager. None of that was revealed to you. What happened was something else. You went through something that changed the nature of what you knew. You had theology. Now you have encounter. You had a second-hand God, the God others described, who fit into systems, who behaved according to moral equations. And now you have a God who came from the middle of a storm to ask questions about Leviathan and snow while you were sitting on a pile of ashes with open sores. That is not the answer you wanted. It is something different from an answer. And then God looked at Eliphaz, at Bildad, at Zophar, and said, "My anger burns against you because you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Not you, the three who defended God, the three who never questioned, the three who built impeccable arguments in favor of divine justice, the three who were theologically correct on every point. These are the ones God rebukes. And you, who spent more than 30 chapters questioning, arguing, demanding an audience, refusing the friend's narrative, swearing your innocence out loud, you are the one God calls faithful." Integrity was not silent submission. It was the refusal to lie. God commands the three to offer burnt offerings, and he commands you to intercede for them. And you pray for the men who said your children died because they deserved it. You pray for them. And then comes the restoration. Double what you had before. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 donkeys. Your brothers return, your sisters return, everyone who had known you before, everyone who had kept their distance when the sores appeared, they return. They bring silver, they bring gold, they bring food, 7 new sons, 3 daughters. And here is a detail that may seem small, but is not. The daughters' names are recorded: Jemima, Keziah, Keren Hapach. In the ancient world you inhabited, recording daughters' names in an official text was the exception. Sons' names, usually yes. Daughters' names, rarely. The text that tells your story records the 3 daughters' names and records none of the sons' names. And you live another 140 years. You see your children and your grandchildren to the 4th generation, and you die old and full of days. But there is one thing the text does not recount in detail, and we must stop here and look at it. The 10 children who died remain dead. Their names do not appear in the book. Your wife, who stood beside you scraping pottery to support you, who said the most honest sentence anyone said in the middle of all of that, she disappears from the text after you answer her. The book does not tell what she felt when the restoration came. It does not tell whether she wept for joy or whether she wept in grief even inside the joy, because the 10 who were gone did not come back. 7 new sons do not erase 7 dead sons. The number may be the same, but the faces are not the same. And somewhere the accuser had his thesis refuted, but did not lose his position. The function that uses human pain as an argument in a tribunal that humans were not invited to join did not disappear because you survived the test. It keeps operating. It keeps asking questions. It keeps pointing to other jobs on other heaps of ashes. What your book proves is not that faith eliminates suffering. What it proves is that it is possible to pass through suffering without falsifying what you feel in order to preserve the theology you were taught. The friends knew everything about God and understood nothing. You knew nothing and arrived at the only place that mattered. Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar had the right answers. You had the right questions. And the right questions came closer to God than the right answers of the others. Integrity is not silent acceptance. Integrity is the refusal to lie about pain in order to please those who are watching, even when the one watching is God. And that is what he called righteous. If you want to understand what happens when a man built to win is destroyed from within and still does not break, Subscribe to the channel because we are just getting started. Next video. POV. You are Samson, marked before you existed, living with a power you never asked for, and the only thing that killed you was not the enemy. It was the mouth of the woman you loved more than you loved yourself.